Yes, there are two key words when we talk about the European power system, power systems in general and the electricity one. The first one is complexity, and the second one is optimization. Well, you all know that electricity is something that is not so stored easily, that where the demand is changing a lot with seasons, with hours in the day. And then a consequence of this is that generation should be exactly what the load is at each time. And as the cost of generation is very different according to technologies, to the number of hours of generation, then there is a huge room for optimization. Optimization is really something essential in electricity. And when I'm afraid the colors are a bit different from the ones I've designed, but we'll try to manage. When you look at the existing European resources, either native or that are converted into electricity, you can see the resources of the different European countries are very different. In Spain, you have a lot of gas-fired power plants and renewables, even if you have also other sources of generation. France is nuclear, Germany is coal and renewables, Denmark is coal and renewables, here only renewable but of coal. Switzerland is hydro, Norway is hydro, so there is a wide diversity. In the 1920s, when there were discussions about the need for a European electricity market, and at that time there were not so many renewables developed, the difference between countries was even bigger. And at that time there were some calculation. What does it cost to Europe to have each country trying to fulfill its own needs in terms of electricity and operating its own power system as it was isolated, which was more or less the case with very little exchanges between the different countries. What the difference between this situation where each country has its own local optimization was done for Spain, for France, for Germany separately, and when you now consider that all the resources are optimized at the scale of Europe. And the difference, which was calculated at that time, was 100 billion euros every year for just operating costs, not investments. And it's huge for the European economy. So the challenge was huge. There is no serious study of this type right now, but my perception, my conviction is that's even more now due to the development of renewables and the strong need to interconnect renewables. So optimization of that power system has a potential saving of 100 billion euros a year. How can you do optimization for such a power system? Can you consider that there is somebody in Brussels controlling all the generation and all the consumption all over Europe? I think this is out of reach. Probably not technically, even if not easy, but of course politically and industrially this is totally out of question. So the optimization is done through decentralized economic agents, which are called traders. And trading is the way to optimize the European power system. So each country still has its own choice. I will come back on this. And the different European countries have different natural resources, and they have different energy mix. And taking advantage of this diversity is key for now and for the future. When we consider this as given, that question of optimization, there are also different reasons to create a European market. When you interconnect the different countries and you make the exchanges of electricity very easy between them, you make the system more resilient. It's much more resilient to incidents, difficulties, scarcities. You save also money in terms of reserves, which mean saving in investments. So you increase the security of supply. And by the way, it's the only realistic way to integrate the development of renewable, which has been one of the political decisions made at the European level. So in this context, an electricity market all over Europe is really a good idea. The cost of energy in Europe is much higher than what it is in the US or in Asia. Not doing an electricity market all over Europe would just be suicide for the European electricity consuming industry, and something extremely costly for the citizens. So when you discuss European policies in Brussels or elsewhere, you always have this presentation with the three pillars. All European energy policies are based on the three targets, which are unfortunately a bit contradictory. They sometimes go together, but it's not exactly obvious. So the first one is sustainability, and behind this you have the development of renewables, competitiveness, cost optimization, and security of supply. And when you look at the past decision of the European Commission in this respect, and what says the Juncker Commission right now, that early 1990s, 1995, and again, it's not an ideological decision that electricity is a commodity like others and the liberalization has to happen there. It was a decision made on this idea of optimization. You can't build something which is so interlinked with national polities in a snapshot, and it has taken a long time and it's not over. So there has been in the 90s a so-called first energy package. Package means a package of European laws, which has decided to go to optimization by trading, liberalization of electricity markets, and has started separating different parts of the industry. That's a very important decision to segment the value chain with supply, generation and supply on one side, transmission in a different segment, distribution in a somewhat different segment, and separating the natural monopolies, which are basically the network activity. Transmission and distribution are so-called natural monopoly. That means that it would be totally stupid to develop two transmission grids or two distribution grids. The cost would be tremendous. So these are natural monopolies, and behind the idea that these monopolies should be regulated. So the second energy package, after seeing the positive and negative effects of the first one, has been to really ask the transmission system operators to be really independent from any other activity. And this is very important because, as you will see, transmission system operators have been given a very specific role in the whole process. And to regulate those monopolies, there has been the obligation to create in each European member state a national regulatory agency, NRA, which is supposed to be independent. So then don't ask me independent of what. The idea was basically independent of the political power. It's something always difficult, and it has been achieved to some extent, but to some extent only, because when you are a national regulator and you're appointed by the Prime Minister or by the Parliament, who decides how much you have on your payroll at the end of the month, you are to some extent independent, but not always fully independent. Then there was a push to have some regional initiatives so that transmission system operators, TSOs, and regulators, NRAs, are trying to have some regional level projects pushing ahead the European market. And a definition of what should be the ideal world. It's called the target model. There is a whole bunch of vocabulary. If you go to Brussels, you need a specific dictionary with a number of acronyms, basically 1,000 acronyms you have to know. And I will try, and if I use some, please raise your hand and I'll explain. And also different words which have in Brussels language a different meaning, meaning different from the one you may understand spontaneously. So target model is some reserved word for that's paradise. And in 2009, there has been a third package reinforcing the independence of TSOs which have to pass an exam, which is a certification, and creation of two new European bodies, ENTSO-E and ACER. ACER is a European agency, like the Space Agency, so that means a staff with a CEO, board members. ACER has been set in Ljubljana in Slovenia, and ENTSO-E is also a European association which has its legal mandates and legal duties according to European law. So ENTSO-E, maybe I will tell you some words about it now. So it's 41 transmission system operators coming from 34 European countries. So you know there are still 28 European member states in Europe, but we are 35 around the table because the interconnected power system in Europe also includes Switzerland, Norway, and all the countries from the former Yugoslavia and the Balkan area countries, which are part of ENTSO-E because they operate the same single machine as we all operate. And finally, the last legislative initiative was REMIT, which is a European regulation on transparency, which means that now on European power system and European markets, you can find on an ENTSO-E website, it's one of the responsibilities of ENTSO-E, all real-time and past data concerning the power system. Data which were considered 10 years ago as commercial secrets are now available on the website in real time permanently. If a power plant in Europe has a difficulty and is down, it has 15 minutes to publish that it's now out of service and what its best expectation to come back. Everything is transparent, and that's also a way to create a market. It's a very important notion, and to have a fair behavior of all players. When everything is available in real time on the internet, if you are cheating, there is always somebody who sees you are cheating. So it's really a very strong incentives for virtue, making everything public. So in the year 2000, there was a big move to design a European market and make something concrete from these words. It was based on something which is called the energy-only model, I will develop later on. Again, that it was decided that the current situation with very low exchanges of electricity between countries was not acceptable because it was showing that there was a huge room for further short-term optimization. And then the two main tools which were available for going forward were developing the hardware, all infrastructures, and developing a common software for European countries. And in that game, the transmission system operators who are developing the transmission infrastructure on one hand, and on the other are operating this single huge machine, which is the European power system, has been granted a special role. Why? Because again, this power system is extremely complex. It's a machine, a unique machine where, you know, when you have a generation plant which gets offline in Poland, you can see it in your plug in Sevilla at the same second. It's nonlinear, counterintuitive. It has phenomena from the microsecond to the century. Operating this machine is something which really needs specialists, and those specialists really understand that machine. Now, when you want to build something from this, and you develop ideas on an organization of the market, for example, without the help of those engineers who run, design, and operate the physical machine, you may have really nice ideas, smart ideas, and catastrophic ideas. So a fundamental idea in the European regulation is, let's ask those specialists to design the main tools. Of course, we don't trust them. Of course, we don't trust them. They are engineers. We can't trust engineers. They have probably their own private agenda. So, second statement, of course, there will be regulators to control what they are doing, to stimulate them. But the really good idea was, let's have the design by the engineers and the orientation, the targets, the control, the stimulation by regulators and by the Commission. Some countries have asked, I'm in a university and I have excellent friends, university professor. In some countries, university professors have been asked to design models, or sometimes economists. And you know, economists are the most dangerous people in the world, probably the most dangerous profession, except one. I know one which is even more dangerous, which is amateur economists. These ones are really the top of the danger in the world. In those countries, people came with really bright ideas, smart ideas. Just a problem, they was not compatible with the physics. And this has turned into market catastrophes, which, depending on the political influence of the designers, have taken 5, 10 years, sometimes 15 years to say, well, now we put this aside and we go the normal way. But so these TSOs I humbly represent have been granted this major role to ensure consistency and efficiency between hardware and software. And of course, this means that they have to be kept under very strict monitoring and control, because their power has to be moderated and compensated. Besides this, there were some political decisions on what should be the future of the European energy mix. And this is a very touchy topic. It's a very touchy topic. One reason is nuclear. I know this morning you have had a lecture of nuclear, on nuclear power. And nuclear power in Europe is a really tough issue for dispute. You have countries who have nuclear power, who want to have nuclear power, and who don't want to be prevented from having nuclear power. You have countries who don't have nuclear, they don't want nuclear, and they don't want to be forced to have nuclear. There is then one consensus all over Europe. Energy is too hot a topic, let's keep it national. And you know that the European treaties is a long story, from the Treaty of Rome and the current one, which is the Lisbon Treaty, up to the previous one, the ENTSO-E Treaty, including Maastricht, etc. There was not a single line about energy, which, when you know the European Treaty, where we discuss everything, there was not a single line about energy. The Lisbon Treaty, for the first time, addresses energy, and there is a section of energy. It's pretty short. At this stage, we should have a European energy market which is competitive, provides security of supply, provides sustainability and favors development of renewables and storage. Everything is nice. When you read this, you say, well, this is it, we have it. Unfortunately, just after, there is a sentence saying, nevertheless, the definition of the energy mix and the energy resources is of the sole responsibility of the member states. So after this nice sentence, it says, well, the European Commission and at the European Union, there is strictly no power. And this is to member states. And for years, the Commission has strictly no no power to discuss energy things. And in the 90s, early 2000, every time the Commission was just thinking about it, there was a couple of member states saying, well, you get out of this because you are forbidden to do it. Energy is a crucial topic, so the European Commission has always been interested in addressing the energy issues by its conventional powers, markets. The European Commission has very strong instruments in terms of markets, all markets, also energy markets. The Commission has some also responsibilities and devoted powers in terms of climate. So climate is a possibility. And finally, infrastructures. Infrastructures is always also something that the Commission has some power in. In the second half of the year 2000, the General Director of Energy at the European Commission, perfectly aware of the Lisbon Treaty and all that mess, tried something. He said, I will try to have a common target in terms of renewable. And that's given way to that European decision on the so-called 20-20-20 targets. That means, in fact, there are 520. It's for the year 2020. You have 20% energy savings, 20% renewables, and 20% reduction in CO2. And at his major surprise, it was not blocked, and this law was passed. That's the first time ever there has been something looking like the beginning of a European policy in terms of energy. 20% renewable in 2020 for each member state. And now there has been another decision which has been taken last year for 2030, because it's very important to look forward with some years of anticipation, and now gives minus 40% for CO2 emissions, always the same reference to 1990. 20% renewable energy, 27% energy efficiency, and improved governance. Maybe some comments on this. 20% renewable energy in terms of electricity, it means 45% electricity from renewable energy. So the part of renewable energy for electricity is huge. What does that mean? Improved governance. For the objective to 2020, it was easy. Every member state had the duty to produce 20% of renewable. Easy to control, but stupid results. I recently landed in the airport of Exeter in Cornwall, southwest England, in small plane, which is in the clouds, in the rain. At the last minute, just before the airport, you see a huge PV farm. And when you look at the climate in this part of Britain, you just wonder why they have built a big photovoltaic power plant in this part of Europe and not in Sevilla, for example. And you have nice developments of photovoltaic in Finland. I'm not sure it's the best use of subsidies and public money. If you really think that we have to develop renewables, there is, of course, a part of Europe where wind power is very strong with large resources and with basically a range from Ireland to Finland through the North Sea, where there are really huge sustainable wind. There are other parts, and Spain is a part of Europe where there is also some wind. And of course, for sun power, Southern Europe is a better area. So for this time, the 45% renewable for electricity is not assigned in terms of countries. It's for Europe. And the way it will be dispatched and the final goal will be met by the different countries is not defined. So we know the target, we just don't know how to go there, which will mean in that delicate context where the European Union has no power to impose to a given country some specific task, to go to a final pan-European target. On the 25th of February this year, there has always also been a very important communication by the European Commission. You know, the current president for the European Commission is Mr. Juncker. And before being elected, he campaigned for being elected, and when he campaigned, he had a program for the next 10 major points for Europe. Jobs was number one, energy was number second. And making up his new commission, he appointed a vice president of the European Commission, Mr. Šefčovič, as vice president in charge of the European Energy Union. It's a new term, Energy Union, very strong, knowing that Lisbon Treaty that forbids this, basically, and nobody has the idea to reopen the Lisbon Treaty Pandora box. At least for the next 10 years, nobody will touch the Lisbon Treaty. And he has appointed a commissioner for energy, which, by the way, is Spanish, Mr. Cañete, to work specifically on some topics, but with one guy responsible for reaching the energy union. And he has started, this communication start to describe what he means by energy union, and it's quite strong. There is a real political will, and there are instruments which are behind, including a clear threat to member states who currently do not fully implement the current legislation, and who are in the communication clearly say that now we stop playing, and when a member state does not fulfill its duty, there will be a legal action by the European Commission. And in this communication, security of supply and also competitiveness is at the heart of this energy policy. So there has been in many of the countries this energy transition, which now also brings challenges in terms of financing. And still we have those different member state policies in terms of subsidies to renewables, to carbon taxation, to capacity mechanism, long-term contracts, which are a real challenge in terms of having something working in a uniform manner. So that's the Lisbon Treaty effect. It's in the background, and the whole political game is to let the Lisbon Treaty as it is, but go around it and try to find a real European energy policy. So let's come back a second to that question of hardware and software, which are the two basic tools for creating that European market. Hardware infrastructure, generation plant, transmission and distribution grids, and software is the market design. Hardware, I will go quite quickly for this. In terms of hardware, interconnectors, as the different European countries develop their own power systems, they develop their transmission grid and some interconnectors with the neighbors. But that European grid today has been developed as a collection of national development plans. When the European law has created ENTSO-E, one duty which has been given to ENTSO-E is to be the central planner for the whole European grid. That means that now there is somebody responsible for designing the European infrastructure, not by considering the countries, but looking at the overall European power system and designing the infrastructures which are necessary and good for this European power system, whether this member state likes them or not. And that's implemented in something which is called the TYNDP, one of the 1,000 acronyms, which means 10-year network development plan. In fact, 10 years is a bit too short for some reasons. You may also see in Spain, when there is a decision to build a new grid infrastructure, there is immediately a lot of opposition against this. Typically, the future neighbors of the line don't like these pieces of art, which are called towers, pylons, and they fight against this infrastructure, which means that in political terms, it's very difficult for politicians to support a project of infrastructure, and the permitting process, the appealing process is such that typically it requires 10 years to build something. So if you plan for the next 10 years, and you need 10 years to develop, it's a bit too late. That means that this plan publishes things which are already decided. So it looks, in fact, 15 years ahead. So it looks, the last one to be published, this one, 2014, looks up to 2030. And this 2030 plan looks again at what is the infrastructure needed for this 2030 European power system, and consults all the stakeholders. It's not a black box process, it's again a transparent process where everything is on the table, the assumptions, the scenarios, the results, etc. So there is a vision of the European grid for 2030. It's public, it's available, and then there is a commitment for member states to build. What does that last plan tells us? It tells that we need 50,000 kilometers of new or refurbished grid investments. Among them, 20,000 kilometers of new overhead lines, the most difficult to build, and also a number of kilometers of subsea cables, underground cables, and refurbished lines. One of the parameters is to optimize land use, and especially to avoid any new infrastructure in populated areas. The cost for this plan is 150 billion euros for 15 years. But it saves, that's less than €1 per megawatt hour. The saving is 2 to 5 times this. Or say it in the other way, if you don't build this, the bill of the consumer will raise about 3 to 5% just because of the lack of optimization, that huge stack of banknotes that you put fire on at the end of the year. This plan allows to mitigate 20% of CO2 emission for the European power system as a contribution to the overall 40% target. And it allows to accommodate up to 60% of renewable in the total electricity consumption, which is a bit more than the 45%, which is the target. Well, this is a map showing that there are many bottlenecks, 120 projects which are considered as critical, and then this is the basis for defining critical projects, the projects of common interest, which are eligible to special finance, to special permitting processes, etc., because they are really necessary for building that robust power system and competitive power system that we need. That's not given for granted, because today, again, permit granting is just terrible. If I have to take one example to show what can be the outcome of this. In Italy, in 2012, there was what I would say by understatement, a slight misadaptation of the subsidies to photovoltaic. In 1 year, 9,000 megawatts of photovoltaic have been built. To accommodate this generation, when it peaks, the Terna, the Italian transmission system operator, needs to build new infrastructure, but this infrastructure will not be ready before 2025. So if you really can change the energy production in 1 to 3 years, and that the infrastructure to adapt the grids to this generation needs 10 years, you are really in a problem. Probably many of you are engineers, and you know what, when you underestimate the time constants, what happens in a process, it quickly diverges, and we have here a risk for divergence. And this is because public acceptance. One of the reasons is that in Europe, still a number of citizens think that renewable energy is decentralized. It's local, You have your PV cell on your roof, then you don't need a transmission grid. Even you should take away those ugly towers and take out the transmission grid. It's not useful anymore. Well, the problem is when you are the only one who have your PV cell on your roof, it's right. When you have 10 million neighbors who have the same idea than you, it's just the contrary. At the moment, for example, when there is a sunny day over Bavaria, the peak generation at 1 o'clock is 24 gigawatts, 24,000 of megawatt of PV generation. 0 at 8 in the morning and 0 at 6 p.m. And if you are in a control center of a European TSO, you see the flows like a sponge, you know, the flows at 1 o'clock and then in the evening to feed back. It changes the whole pattern of flows all over Europe. On the contrary, with renewables, and to pool the intermittency of the renewables, we need transmission grid. When there is wind on the North Sea, that may compensate the lack of wind in Spain, and vice versa. And this is a fundamental element that it's not well perceived by the European citizens. More renewables means more infrastructure. Maybe there will be somebody with a magic idea for local storage, cheap, abundant, and available everywhere. The problem is that it doesn't exist, and it does not exist in the foreseeable future. And even if in this room, at the end of the meeting, one of you has a totally bright idea how to make very inexpensive storage from the water from the tap, it will require some time to be industrially developed and installed at wide scale in Europe, which means that in 2030, for sure, this problem will not be solved by local cheap storage. We need infrastructure. And financing now is also an issue. Now let's come to software and the market design. Well, the market design is something which is which also gives way to a lot of misunderstandings. Market design, it's a virtual modeling of the physical power system designed so that trade between market participants drive to the social welfare optimum. I was saying that the power system is complex. Everything changes every second. The frequency changes every second. If you look at the exchange between two countries, it changes at every second. You know that, well, Spain is a different case because it's attached to the continent only by a single border. But let's take the example of France and Italy. It's not feasible to arrange an exchange of 100 megawatt between France and Italy. Nobody knows how to do it. So how is it managed? When there is a trade from 100 megawatt from France to Italy, the two TSOs do the following things. They manage that France is in over-generation of 100 megawatt and that Italy is on under-generation of 100 megawatts. So the overall is balanced. But then the flows goes everywhere. If you trade 100 megawatts, I should have shown these slides, from Belgium to Italy, you may think that these 100 megawatts go to France and then to Italy. No, half of them go to the Netherlands and then to Germany and comes back by everywhere. It's a Kirchhoff law over the meshed power system, and it goes where the physical laws tell to go. And this is untradable. It's untradable. It's too complex, too second dependent to be tradable. That's why there is a need to make that virtual world, which is called the market design, where you design products like 1 megawatt hour power block. Does exist, you trade 1 megawatt hour power block. Has no reality. What is it? Electrons painted in blue, pieces of Maxwell equations. It has no physical meaning. Then, to be even more confusing, you can trade physical transmission right between, let's say, the Netherlands and Germany. Those physical transmission rights are everything but physical. Your physical electricity will flow all over Europe. But you buy a kind of possibility to trade what you want to trade between the Netherlands and Germany. This virtual world cannot be any virtual world. It needs to have different properties. But first, one consequence of this is that there is no perfect market design. For a long time, the European Commission people were sure that somebody, hidden somewhere in his table had the perfect market design. Does not exist. It has to be dependent on the physical world. And so that means that permanently you have to address the gaps between the physics and the markets. And then taking into account the realities that power systems is not a copper plate, there are bottlenecks, electricity can't be stored directly, very complex machine. So you need to have tradable products which can be traded all over Europe. And the two main properties are the following. Those products need to be compatible with the needs and functioning of the power system. They should not incentivize market players to play against the physics, because then you jeopardize the security of supply. And the second one is that these products should fit their needs. That means that with these products, they may handle and manage portfolio, they may hedge their risks, they may anticipate. So there are needs for a number of commercial properties for this. And this, again, in order to go to the overall social welfare optimum and try to capture part of these 100 billion euros every year. So to go there has been two different and simultaneous ways. One is so-called top-down approach through network codes, which are pan-European rules applicable in all countries, and a bottom-up approach on regional projects. These are supposed to interact in 2015. That's a big year for the European market. So the network codes are a set of rules which are written by ENTSO-E, the one who know how it works, in consultation with market participants. Then they are looked at by the Agency of Regulators, which has to give an opinion, then approved by one of these bureaucratic systems that Brussels has a secret of, which is called comitology. It's a committee of the member states with the Commission. It's a very slow and difficult process, but finally it works. And then when adopted, this becomes part of the legislation in each and every European member states. No translation into the local legislation. It's automatically applicable and overrules all existing legislation. So it's an extremely strong legal instrument. And so if we use again these three key words for Europe, for sustainability, there are three connection codes, which are requirements for generators, requirements for demand connection, and for HVDC connection. Three market codes, day-ahead and intraday markets, forward markets, balancing markets. And four operational code, operational security, planning and scheduling, load frequency control and reserves, and emergency and restoration. Now the bottom-up approach. In 2007, the Commission has defined these different regions where local initiatives were supposed to start. Didn't work very well. Very depending on the region. Some regions performed well, some not. Depending on local arrangements, many things we can discuss afterwards if you like. One success story, which is the day-ahead market design and the emergence of market coupling. In 1993, so an old story, our Scandinavian colleagues have set up a scheme which was called market splitting, where they were pooling the whole generation and deciding for whole Scandinavia the day before which was the most competitive generation to be started the next day. And it performed pretty well. So some nice guys in Central West Europe looked at it, say, looks nice. There is a prerequisite. In Scandinavia, there was only an exchange platform called Power Exchange, Nord Pool Spot. A long history of common rules. So when we decided to start something between France, Belgium, and the Netherlands, we decided, for many political obstacles and cultural obstacles, to start with 3 different power exchanges, 3 different platforms, 3 different regulators, etc., but to emulate this and to create what we called market coupling instead of market splitting. And the spirit of that system is, again, in these 3 countries, the generation which is started for the next day is the cheapest one that you can have. And it's a huge step towards optimization. It was extremely difficult to get regulatory approval for this because the regulators were very anxious about this, very anxious. France-Belgium border was supposed to be the most congested in Europe at that time. From the day we have put this in operation, in 99% of the hours, it was the same price and the congestion that disappeared. And it's not a mystery. Again, I may come back later on this if you are interested. So this, which was almost forbidden, became mandatory. And it became part of the European target model. So in 2007, the colors are not really visible, but that was Spain and Portugal. That was in Ireland. Then 2007, Spain and Portugal. Then in 2009, France, Netherlands, Belgium, Germany, and Scandinavia made something. Then you see the next steps which started. 2014, last year, UK, Central West Europe and Northern Europe in a single market, and the Baltic states. Spain and Portugal integrated in autumn 2014. In February, Italy, Slovenia and Austria joined. So you see now we have something which guarantees that from Lisbon to Helsinki, as far as there is no congestion, it's always the cheapest generation which is started. And it's a huge step forward. And there is a plan that someday the whole Europe will be like this. Intraday is also something very important because with renewables and their intermittency, you need to review your plans several times during the day. But that's also a story which is on, and that should go for an intraday pan-European coupling somewhere probably in 2017. I will not discuss in details how market coupling works, but I think you will have the slides to look at later on if you're interested. It's a system where you allocate at the same time the energy and the transmission rights implicitly. That means that the market participants do not know they have access to transmission capacities between countries. Typically, that's how looks a power exchange. You build a demand curve and a supply curve. The demand curve is how much electricity are you ready to buy if the price is below a given figure. And the supply curve is how much electricity you want to sell if you are a generator, if the electricity is more expensive than a given value. And when the curves cross, you have the quantities which are exchanged and the clearing price. When the different systems are separated, then you lose a lot of social welfare, and the market coupling allows you to, as far as there is no congestion, totally integrate the different curves and make these huge savings in terms of social welfare. And if there is still some congestion and you still have a spread between the market prices, you can anyhow benefit from a significant part of this social welfare. And this is the way it works, just to show that it's not extremely easy to implement because many parties, but now it works really well. And there is a real price convergence with sometimes a total price convergence from Lisbon to Helsinki. The next step will be to implement some more detailed network modeling, and this is another story. So the challenges ahead of us. Energy transition is everywhere. currently more than 150 gigawatts of renewable all over Europe, which means really new infrastructures and balancing capabilities. The curve here is just the figure of the exchanges of electricity between France and Germany. And if you look at the green curve, which is the amount of renewable generated in Germany, you see that the exchanges are directly linked to the generation of renewable, and that they drive a big part of the current European market. The major challenge, we need more flexibility. It will come from the generation. It will, to a large extent, come from demand response and the flexibility of consumers and the price they will be granted for giving flexibility in their way to use electricity. We need more anticipation. It's difficult to read the other points. We need to address what is a part of the market, what is the part of the subsidies. Today, a major part, I would say, of the European generation is subsidized. Can you have a real well-functioning market if you subsidize a significant part of the electricity generation? This has to be addressed, and it will be addressed in the coming months. You have to provide signals and incentives for long-term investments. The day-ahead optimization in Europe works perfectly well. There is a slight problem. Nobody invests anymore in generation except renewables. And the last one is, yes, to shrink all the time the gap between the market and the physics, which still is quite strong. So some recommendation for market design. There is today a target model. It should be implemented as soon as possible. The current market design should be improved by integrating renewable into the market. We can't have any more renewable totally aside of the market. We have to address the question of balancing, which means having always at the same time demand and generation at the same level. Again, this is a new challenge with intermittent energy, and we have to address this. And demand side should participate and be promoted with all you hear and know under the word of smart grids, and I think tomorrow you will have discussion on this. And then the technical scarcities in the system. Today, quite often the peak generation or the flexibility have to be given an economic value and traded on the market. So demand response, smart grids and big data processing are really a key for the future market design. It's a story that only starts. And we will succeed if we are able to manage the governance complexity and the political complexity between all the decisions I've mentioned. Thank you.